Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Omnia Fit. This is Kate here, and I have a fellow RD with me, Caroline. Caroline, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of talk through what you do now as an RD and kind of what clients you work with?
Yes, for sure. So, like you mentioned, I am also a dietitian. I'm also credentialed as a diabetes educator. So, my clinical background is in diabetes, but I really branched out in the last year and started my own private practice and started working with especially women who have a disordered relationship with food or just feel like they're chronically dieting. So that's where I'm at now. I run a private practice and I also do some other things like freelance writing, all about nutrition and yo-yo dieting.
That's awesome. And what kind of inspired you to branch out and start that private practice? What was kind of the mind frame behind that in terms of wanting to work with women of a specific need?
Yeah, I personally have struggled with chronic dieting behaviors and like disordered eating in the past, and it wasn't like a big part of my plan, to be honest. I thought I just wanted to be a private practice dietitian, but like as I got more and more into it, I just realized that what people are really struggling with is being consistent, and they're really hopping from diet to diet. And so I think once I opened my private practice, I just realized like, oh, this is what everybody's struggling with. At least everybody that I was talking to, you know? And so it's just a lot of seeing it over and over again. And I was like, okay. And it also, I think, is a good match, coming from my history and knowing what it's like to go through those types of disordered behaviors or just, chronic yo-yo dieting, jumping from one diet to the next, never really feeling consistent or finding success, but just feeling super frustrated. So that is what kind of led me down that road. And I'm so glad I did because I have so many amazing clients that all really are making progress and no longer jumping from diet to diet and really finding great results. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, and do you want to share a little bit more of your personal experience of that mindset and kind of how you realized it was not working for you or not the healthy mindset that you wanted to have going forward? Was that kind of as you became a dietitian that you realized that, or was it later?
Yeah, man, that's such a good question. I really struggled in high school and college, like most girls probably, at that age.
Yeah,
Um,
that's such a tough age.
yeah, and I feel like I was kind of overweight as a kid, not like super overweight, but just didn't really have a healthy diet, didn't really understand like why, vegetables were important or things like that. And then in high school, I started running. And so that was kind of like the first dip into dieting, even though I was like doing it to be healthier. And, I really enjoyed running and I kind of found this like outlet through that. So it started off pretty innocent, but it was one of those things that just took a hard turn when life got really stressful and I didn't really have like coping behaviors in college, later on a couple years after that. And so it can get, even though I think it starts innocent, sometimes it can get ugly really fast. And um, especially coming from where I was, which was really like this very restrictive mindset, all or nothing, kind of extreme. I was like interested in the extreme approach. And so for me, I think it was this whole process, like probably the whole reason I became a dietitian subconsciously. I think this is true for a lot of dietitians, was like, I was like, I'm going to figure it out. Like, I was searching for the thing. And so it was just like waiting for, um, that moment where I was just going to put that final piece into place. And so I thought that that's what I was going to get from being a dietitian. And then I just didn't really end up feeling that way at all. And it took me going through my own like personal journey to really um, figure out how to have a healthy relationship with food. And it probably took me like, I mean, if we're going back to high school, it probably took me like 5, 6, 7 years, which is so long and doesn't have to be like that at all. And so I think for me, it just kind of motivated me to work with other people and teach them things, get them there faster and have better coping skills and learn how to have a healthy relationship with food, what balanced eating really can look like, um, without taking like 7 years to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And you kind of talked a little bit about yo-yo dieting and dieting cycles. Do you kind of want to go into why that can be so harmful, both mentally and physically, in terms of what it does to you psychologically? Not only that, but also it takes a toll on your body. If you want to kind of go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, oh, you brought up really great points. So with yo-yo dieting, the way I describe yo-yo dieting is just periods of being restrictive and then periods of like it's like all or nothing. So you're super restrictive, you're on a diet, or you're totally off it. And I think this is kind of like a normalized pattern in our culture. So when people initially like learn about the fact that this is could be harmful, they're like, "Wait, what? Like I thought everybody was doing this." Um but yeah, yo-yo dieting is basically like super extreme, either on a diet or totally off of it. And it's harmful in a couple ways. Like, if we even just go into physically harmful to our metabolic rate, there are ways that dieting can lower your metabolic rate. It can make certain health markers worse, especially when you're on a diet like long term and not doing it appropriately or like in a short term kind of way. So, yeah, physically can actually be harming your body, your metabolism, and maybe even producing the opposite result. Like, I work with a lot of people who have been on such low calories for so long that they feel like they have to keep them so low to maintain, when we likely just need to start, responsibly raising calories to a great level for them, kind of a personalized level for them. So I think, yeah, like to your point about how it can be physically harmful, those are some of the things that I look at, especially people who have been on these long-term diets for like months to years, definitely physically harming their body. But also, I think maybe even like more so is this psychological harmfulness that comes with dieting, which is basically just, the all or nothing mindset or this restrictive mindset where when you're on a diet, you're miserable and you feel like you have to keep doing it to see this result, but you're never really like learning your body or how to connect with your appetite or different things that are changing throughout the day. And then when you're off the diet, you're totally like rogue, completely off, eating whatever you want, feeling totally out of control. So I think people really struggle with that like all or nothing mindset and then trying to feel in control around food, because you don't really feel in control when you're dieting because you have to stick to the plan, and you feel totally out of control as well when you're not. So kind of like restoring a sense of healthy control without the diets is a lot of the psychology that I work with people.
Yeah. And is there anything that kind of surprises people when you start to go through the process of introducing a healthier mindset? Like you said, people who keep their calories so low because, people go on MyFitnessPal and get the 1100 calorie mark, and then that's kind of in your brain of, I'm supposed to keep my calories really low. That's the only way to keep a healthy weight. And is there anything that you've seen just really surprises people when they start to get into that healthier relationship with food?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times, kind of like you mentioned, when people first come in, like when I first start working with people, they don't realize how little they're actually eating. And then when we talk about how much they need to be eating, it can be really scary. And so like a lot of emotions come up because we're not used to that. And so I think that definitely is like that initial surprise slash like adjustment period is like realizing how much you actually need to be eating and how to do that in a way that's like healthy and balanced and supporting you mentally and physically. So I think that's one thing that's super surprising. And I was thinking about one other thing when you were talking, and it's really this concept, I guess, of like, I work with people on removing a lot of restriction. So when we've dieted for 10, 20, 30 years, we have every diet, every rule in our mind. And so people come in with a lot of anxiety, or they're just feeling totally overwhelmed because they've done so many diets, but they don't know like just basics of eating or like where to even start with where they are now. And so one of the things that we do is like start removing these restrictions. If you couldn't eat carbs on your last diet, we need to start adding carbs in. And how can we do that in a way that feels comfortable and kind of safe for you, but also, stretching you a little bit so that you actually start including new foods. So I call this permission to eat on a very large, I guess, conceptual scale. I just say, here's your permission slip. I'm giving you permission to eat all the carbs. it sounds really scary at first if you haven't been allowing yourself to eat carbs. But what people find, and I think they're really surprised over time, is that just having that permission to eat allows them to just relax around carbs. Instead of having this like hyper anxiety and obsession, it's just so much more relaxed. And so for some people that happens in 2 days, and for other people it takes like months, years, much longer, and that's totally okay, whichever group, somebody might be in. But I think that was the first thing that came up when you asked what is most surprising to people. And then I also think what you mentioned about calories is super relevant too. Like, people are surprised how much you can actually eat.
Yeah, and have you had anyone who came to you and didn't realize that they were disordered in the way that they were thinking about eating? Like that maybe they came to you for a different reason, and the more you talked to them, you were like, "Oh no, that's actually not the issue. We have to dive deeper because something else is going on here, and we need to go through that first," because I feel like that can be a really common thing as well.
Yes, 100%. I think most people, if people are like being referred to me from their doctor, their therapist, or like someone they don't know me or they haven't been following along, online or whatever. So if that's how they're finding me, they are going to come to me and they're usually saying like, I just want to lose weight. I want to feel better in my skin. I just need to find the right diet that's going to work for me. And usually when we get like diving deeper, we realize that there's something else going on. Like, it's rarely ever just, I want to lose weight. Like, that can be part of the process, for many people, but it's usually much more involved than that. And there's usually more under the surface that we have to work through beyond just like a weight loss diet.
Yeah, and do you have any specific kind of clients that their success stories are the most valuable to you, or you hold the dearest to your heart? Like these are the people that you feel like you changed their lives the most, and like those are your big success stories that you love to tell.
Yeah, for sure. So I think some of my like most warming clients are the people that I resonated with, that kind of seemed like a previous version of myself. So um I'm 27, about to turn 28. So some of my closest clients, I guess I could say, have been around my age range and had a very similar history to me. I also struggled with binge eating in college. So I've worked with a few college-aged girls who struggled with binge eating and just totally reached out to me in the middle of crisis mode. And we just kind of slowly we just helped them crawl out of that black hole. And I think, number one, binging is incredibly complex and can be really damaging if you don't address it. And so I think for me, those feel like such great wins as their coach and as their dietitian, because it took me so much longer even after college to get out of that place. And so it just feels really good to know that we've gotten them totally binge free, have a healthy relationship with food before they even graduate from college, and really setting them up for their next stage of life. So those have been some of my most amazing, successful clients, but I also have, so many other ones too. So many other good stories.
Yeah, and I know that you do kind of a program based, I guess, length based program is what I'm trying to say, maybe with your clients. So, do you kind of want to go into like how you choose the right program for people based on their needs and how you kind of format those programs for success?
Totally. So, yeah, I do have kind of a different approach. Most dietitians, if you see someone in like an outpatient center for weight loss or even for disordered eating, binge eating, you're probably going to be working with someone like, once for an hour. I mean, you know this, Kate, I'm sure, but like you're going to get this outpatient counseling experience. And I did that for many years as my full-time job, and I think it's great and it is helpful, but I just noticed I just didn't have the capacity in those jobs to help people the way that I wanted to and to talk to them as much as I wanted to. So the way that I've designed my private practice is more supportive, I would say. So the way that I do it, I call it a membership, kind of like a gym membership, but for a dietitian. And the way that I run it is we can meet either weekly or every other week. So we have video calls for that. And then other kind of features within the membership include food tracking, and there's a lot that goes into that. So people can track like a traditional MyFitnessPal tracking, or they can track with pictures, or they can track intuitive eating signals. Like there's so many different things that we can look at. I think sometimes people are freaked out by the tracking aspect initially, but that's not to say that we can't find a way that it will work for them. So we have our calls, we've got tracking, we've got chatting in the app with me whenever they need, and then they've got these weekly check-ins that I do with them. So those are kind of like the 4 features within the membership, and I work with people on an ongoing basis. So kind of like I was talking about an outpatient, I just got really tired of seeing someone like once a month, and then we were never really like making progress. We were sometimes just picking up where we left off or having the same conversation over and over again. But I feel like the membership, we have so many little touch points, and we're working on such small goals at a time that we really are able to make progress week over week. And that is, very fulfilling for both myself and all of my clients. So that's the way that I currently do it, and kind of the why behind that.
Yeah. And do you see that different clients need you for different periods of time? Like, let's say, so for example, like traditional talk therapy with a psychiatrist or psychologist, you do, some people need 5 sessions, some people go for 6 months, some people go for the rest of their life. So can you kind of compare how that works with your clients as well? Is that sort of a similar, some people you need to see a few times, like we said with outpatient, where you can see them once a month for 3 months and you talk through everything and we're on the right road, and then compared to some of your other clients?
For sure. Yeah, I have definitely had, a few people who've come in. We've worked together really hard for like 3, 4, 5 months, and they're done. They're amazing. They feel great. I would say that's like less the case than the normal. I would say my average person's probably with me 6, 7, 8, or 9 months at this point. This is my first year in business, so I mean, there's people that have been with me the whole year, and maybe that will continue to change over time. But I think the average is at least 6 months. And usually what I tell people is, we get started, we're working on one thing, and we usually uncover all these other things that are relevant. And then maybe we reach your goal, and maybe there's just something new that we want to work on, And so sometimes it just evolves, and that's why we work together longer. Sometimes it just takes a while to unpack all of the things that go into this, uncoupling yourself from yo-yo dieting. So I would say 6 to 8 months is the average, but it really ranges. I've had at this point 3 to 13 months for everybody. So, yeah.
And that's so valid, I feel like, because you think about people who do, like 21-day programs or 30-day programs, and they do like online boot camps, and they do, the quick diets and stuff, and they don't see the success. And then that really just feeds into what what your whole focus is to not do that. Because like you said, you've had clients for a year who are still working through meeting their goals and working through healthier mindsets. And there's not that quick fix of, put in the work for 3 weeks and everything's good and fixed. So
Totally. And yeah, and I would say usually so I'd say there's kind of a pattern when we start working with new people in this way. Everybody has this like great momentum in the beginning. We're all excited, we're hitting our goals, we're feeling good. But then that gets a little monotonous, or maybe we get a little over ambitious and we're trying to do too much at once now that we're comfortable. And then there's usually a 2 to 3 month like backpedal, just a little bit. Like there's usually something that happens around that mark for everybody. It doesn't matter what they came in with. It's just really hard to stick to a new goal or a new habit for that long until it's like, and you have to kind of go through those hurdles before it's automatic. So I would say there's like this 3-month backpedal, and then it's like, okay, let's regroup, let's remotivate. We kind of have to get back on track. That might take a couple months. And then we work through that, one more time, and it really cements it in people's brains. So that's been just like kind of a pattern I've noticed amongst everybody, is that like success is not linear. Whatever the saying is, it's like always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so working through that with somebody over and over again really does make it stick in your brain.
yeah, for sure. And so if, let's say somebody's listening, they're thinking to themselves, like, I'm totally that person. I lose my motivation. I try everything. And obviously, our first step of advice is talk to a dietitian, talk to your therapist. But let's say, like, what would be a piece of advice that you'd have for someone for something that they can start to do on their own to make the first baby steps towards breaking that unhealthy cycle of that mindset?
Yeah. So I would really look at how you are being all or nothing in your life. Because I think a lot of times it comes back to this all or nothing approach. And even if you feel like, I should be able to eat healthy, eat these certain meals that I've meal prepped, go to the gym 5 days a week, like I should be able to do these things. Why can't I get them done? Or I shouldn't be struggling with binge eating anymore. Like we judge ourselves for these things. I think if we just take a step back and make the next smallest goal that we need in the chain of goals that we're going to need to accomplish, like the larger lifestyle change, think about what's the first step. Maybe that's eating breakfast every day. Maybe that's having a protein at every meal to keep you more full. Maybe that's committing to the gym 1 day a week because you haven't been able to go. You're trying to go 5 days a week, but you're so overwhelmed you can't make it happen, so you're not going at all. Starting with something super small that you can be like, all right, I can go do that today, tomorrow. It needs to be something that you can visualize and see yourself doing right away. And then get really consistent with that, whatever that small goal is, and then focus on the next thing. And if you have one of those backpedal moments, really using that anti all or nothing approach, really trying to fight that within your brain so that you can push forward, start again. Every day's a new day, continue on. I think that is where I would recommend most people start for sure.
Yeah, I think that ties in so well with things me and Steph have said 100 times as well on here. And I think that's like such a good way to wrap it up. It's just, that all or nothing mindset is such a tough one to break, but it's so important to creating that healthy mindset and lifestyle that's sustainable for the rest of your life, because the reality is you want to feel good for the rest of your life, like mentally, physically, everything. So thank you so much for all of your great advice. And we'll have our link in our episode notes for anyone who wants to check out your website, reach out to you. Maybe they want to see you as a client. So we will have you accessible to everyone who's interested.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome to chat.
Thank you so much.